meeting to discuss taxation policy. We all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, well, welcome. Welcome, everyone. Out in packed house tonight. I'm gonna turn it right over to you. Thank you.
When I parked out, came in, I saw all the cars lining down the street. I said, you know, we're going to have a lot of people in the community.
Now,
Because they're excited about tax policy.
Before we get started, we need to do the roll call and approval of the agenda real quick.
Oh, perfect. Can we take a roll, please?
Mrs. Deeds,
Here.
Ms. Shaw,
Here.
Mr. Wolf,
Here.
Mr. Crum,
Here.
and Ms. Corn is absent. And approval of the agenda.
so moved. Second.
Okay. Second. Mr. Wolf,
Yes. Hi.
Mr. Crum,
Aye.
Ms. Deeds,
Aye.
Ms. Shaw.
Hi.
Thank you.
Now we can.
Okay. It's good to see you all. Good evening. We're about to wrap things up through this process. It's been a few months. It's been an exciting few months with all the other things going on with the community, and the timing for the policy and the support from the community and the other things are all kind of weaved together to really create some texture for what we're about to do. Our last time together, I provided you all a very rough draft of the policy for you to sort of review and kind of think about how you would want to word, if at all, the language that's in the policy. Most of what was in there was kind of derived from our conversations previously. We've added a few additional changes to the document that we'll go through in a second. But typically what I like to do is just sort of go right through it. It's not a very long document at all. Just kind of go through it, and as we hit areas where you may have comments, we can just make changes. And again, this is your document. Whatever you think makes sense, we put in here, and we just sort of go from there. So I will start with the first part of the paragraph, the opening. This is really sort of your press release. It's the opening statement that if anyone wants the elevator speech as to what the policy is all about, it's this. I'm not sure how many people will actually drill down into it, but based on your review of that language, I don't want to actually sit here and read it to you, but did you all have any other thoughts about that particular opening for the policy itself? I feel like it does a pretty nice job of sort of summarizing where you're going. When we get to the objectives, I'll try to get that screen to clear up. There we go. So the objectives, we decided that we wanted to go with objectives that weren't in any particular order, that they could all be objectives at any given time. This is really just to set forth how you are thinking about the application of taxes that you currently collect and or for the future. It's primary high-level things, making sure you have money to operate the district and to pay your debt and to provide for maintenance. The policy is also there to make it clear as to when you would look at another levy if you needed to have another levy. It's also there to say that you all will continue to be responsible in how you spend taxpayer dollars so that you can be sustainable as possible for the longest period of time. Again, these are big high-level items. The next is to consider the affordability of the taxes that residents have to pay regardless of their economic wherewithal. So, basically a much more global perspective about keeping the district reasonably affordable, and also at the same time delivering value to the community based on the type of education and facilities that you provide them. So that's what the next bullet is there. 4, there's language that talks about balance and how much taxpayers pay through their tax structure. So balance relative to, in some cases, the age people living on fixed income versus people that are not living on fixed income and using the district, as well as additional demographic aspects. back to managing the cost of services, looking, not that you guys don't do this, but again, putting in writing that you will absolutely look for efficiencies in the way that you operate. Again, making that promise to the community to keep your long-term operating costs as low as you can while also providing what the community sees as their standards, what they expect from you. Expect a focus on delivering, focus on the district's efforts of delivering value to taxpayers. So the thought there is to make sure that whatever the cost is of the district is meeting what the community is expecting from you, from your value proposition. If you remember our homework about what is it that your community truly expects from you as an educational institution, but making sure that there's an effort to always know that those things are aligned, that the cost doesn't get out of line with what people are expecting you to provide for them. The version you have, this is new language that I've added simply because since the last time we've been together, I've been with another 6 school districts, and there are these new thoughts that come up. I wanted to show you some language that came up in a couple of conversations. You can tell me how you feel about this. So this language came up from 2 districts that have a very high percentage of their residents that are retired. And their sensitivity in those districts is whether or not people that are retired feel like their dollars are providing some direct value to them. So seek ways to ensure all residents receive value from the district in return for their tax dollars. Identify and seek to provide measures, services, programs, facilities, and other amenities that create meaningful value and opportunities for engagement for all taxpayers, regardless of age, whether they have children in the district or their level of direct involvement with the school system. So that's a sort of a wordy way of saying that as you think about the way you provide things for the community, are you also including in that process people that may not have students here? And so how does that language strike you at all? Because again, this is for discussion purposes. This is not a recommendation. It's just, would you like something like that, or what are your thoughts?
Does this highlighted portion here replace the last bullet point within the objectives?
It is the last bullet point.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's still
Okay.
there. This is an added bullet point.
Jeff, is this an opportunity to talk about collaboration? Or
I
do
think
you think that's necessary?
Yeah.
We've been having conversations with the village and the township and the rec district about trying to be efficient and more collaborative.
I do think that we could add something to the previous statement about where is it? Maintain and promote financial sustainability without relying on new taxation. You know, we could add a partnering with other municipalities to, reduce costs for taxpayers or something. We could add something there, and I think that that would be a good place for that.
So, like, maybe at the end of the sentence, add, may include collaborating with.
Yeah.
So,
Other municipalities.
what I'll do is I'll add in the changes, but then I'll go back to my
Yeah,
office
work
and really
Yeah.
shine it up.
I just think,
No, I think so that's one of the things I was gonna comment on, but we'll get there too, yeah.
yeah, and I think plus it can, we can show that to the other partners too,
Yeah.
that we're talking about collaboration.
Yep.
And
So back to that new bullet point. I have thoughts, but does anyone have thoughts before me? I saw you nodding your head.
No, you go ahead.
Okay, so I don't love it. I feel like it adds, when you get a minute, I feel like it adds a responsibility to our district and to our staff, our superintendent, that feels a little outside of what an educational institution's goals and needs are. I mean, I could be swayed, I'm sure. I would love to hear other perspectives. identified seek to provide measures, services, programs, facilities, and other amenities to create meaningful value and opportunities for engagement for all taxpayers. I mean, it's not exactly the big goal of, the primary goal of schools, but
I'd be curious to know what the other districts that were leaning in that direction identified as some things of value that they could provide to.
Yeah, well, some of them either officially or unofficially offer, for example, the opportunity for older residents to use the track or walking clubs. Others have either breakfasts or lunches where they'll invite, I don't like to use the word seniors because I qualify, but older residents, those that are, a little bit older. And,
Mature.
so there are districts that already do some things, they just haven't necessarily specifically said to the community, we're doing this for you as a segment of our community and as a way for us to try to give a little bit back to you based on, your contribution to the district. Some districts are actually looking at adding new opportunities for people to use school facilities, to come in and potentially, again, like walk, it could be physical, it could be academic, where they can come in and potentially use a STEM lab or learn how a 3D printer works, sort of expanding the opportunity for older people to come in and say, oh, this is nice, you've got a nice, because otherwise they don't see the facilities, they don't necessarily know what the districts have to offer. So it's just sort of thinking about using existing facilities as they are today for some very low-cost opportunities to have older residents, specifically older residents that don't have kids here, to have a reason to be in the buildings. It could be a guest lecturer, it could be something potentially.
And we do a lot of this.
Yeah.
So I think
programmatically, right?
the thing that the reason why I think it might be appropriate to have a nod to this is that we are now 33% over
Yeah.
65. So, I mean, we're a third of our population is approaching that over 65 age range. So I do think it's a pretty large constituency. And so if we're intentional about saying, yeah, we value you and here's your value to being a part of the schools, it's a little wordy. I'd like to see it a little bit more condensed, because I think it gets a little bit specific.
Yeah, I think those two that you have up there can be combined.
I agree. Yeah,
This one and this one?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, I can reword that.
yeah, and
Something
I would.
that's not as specific, but the spirit of
Right,
ensuring everyone has,
Value.
right, because
Yeah.
like our board can rattle off the things that we do
Mhm.
to, like the holiday program and some of the
Yeah.
programs that we do to bring people in. We allow 65 and over in for free, to our athletic contests, those types of things. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So there's a lot of things that we could like reference, but I don't know that we have to be as explicit. Yeah.
So a couple of these, just like you all started to name off, it's somewhat surprising how many things districts do.
Yeah.
They just don't necessarily I was asking one district, they have like free tickets to performances of the students, athletic events and things like that. And I said, does the community, do they know they can get them for free? And they're like, well, yeah, I guess. I mean, we've been doing it for years. I'm like, have you ever like specifically said, we're doing these for you? Sort of making sure the community knew. One district had, I may have shared that with you guys, they do a senior prom, which is the day after the actual prom. And they say it's just it's a big hit in their community. And so that started to really drive this conversation with voters becoming somewhat separated from what schools, especially if they're, you know, in their 60s and they don't have kids here anymore. Is there a way to specifically say, you still matter to us, and we're gonna either already, things that we're already doing, making sure you're aware we're doing those things, or maybe even adding to that potential list of things that could be more inclusive?
And to Ms. Shaw's point, I don't disagree with you at all on your point. And I also, I'm hesitant of anything that already puts additional burden on our facilities, because we do a heck of a job of our school facilities being used by the community. And I'm glad we can do it, but they are used a lot.
And I agree, so taking out some of the specifics and just talking about creating meaningful value and opportunities for engagement of all
Yeah.
taxpayers, regardless of age, like, I think that
Yeah.
gets at it, you know?
I don't want to hamstring future boards or even the current board in the fact that we're this specific with what the value should be. You know, we don't partner with a health system, we don't have a walking track or an indoor pool facility, just as an example, where, right, the senior population would benefit. I mean, maybe that's something to consider in the future, right, as our constituency gets older. But yeah, I mean, I think the intent is there. I'd like the idea behind the statement. I just don't know the specificity around it.
The terminology.
Yeah.
I'll find a more abbreviated way to combine those two
That would be
bullets
great.
together.
Yeah.
But I think, I think you raised a really important point, and it got my mind going on, like, how do we engage with senior citizens? So I think that, thank you for bringing that up.
And I think you brought up a really good point, because you don't want the policy to actually add an additional burden. And so I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, I do.
Because our core purpose is to be, you know, an educational space for human development, so.
Yeah, and it's been a challenge, and I'm going to challenge you, how we let, I'll call them empty nesters. If they're out of the school system with their kids, communication is tough.
Yeah.
And I don't know, my experience is expecting them to look for it, they just don't.
It's not on the radar.
Buy an annual newsletter that Jeff puts out.
Well, no, that is a huge help,
Yeah.
but like the idea of I don't know how many people I tell them about, you're old enough, you can get into the game for free.
I didn't know that until this second, until right now.
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
suspect yet,
Well,
but we have people around us who might, yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's, yeah.
You know, that, and they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah, for the home games, you can get in.
That's really.
And all you have to do is just call the athletic office and give them your name.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's a different challenge there, but it's an ongoing one.
But it's important, some of these sessions, I actually have people in the audience. And I mean, not to discount you guys. You guys sit back there, no one ever says anything, you just sit back there. But I have other audiences that participate and they weigh in.
I wish.
And we have, from time to time, in this particular topic, someone brought up the other day, when their kids went off to college, they unsubscribed to the newsletter from the school district, and they had no other reason to actually go to the website. So the ability, they didn't want any more information from the school district. They were like, we're
Burned out.
We're burned out.
Yeah.
We're done. So your point is well taken. It's like when people get to that point, how else do you let them know that, that there are things going on? So this is sort of getting at that the district isn't forgetting about those residents. We remember, you contributed while your kids were here, your kids have moved on, you still count, you still matter to us. We don't, we're not gonna offer a whole bunch of things, but where we can, that isn't overly expensive, we'll consider that, or at least make some attempts to do that.
And I think it's a good faith effort, and at least for me, it is important what empty nesters, seniors, whatever, what they think, because they live here.
Yeah.
And their voice is important to hear.
The cooperative approach too, I think in this community would work really, really well, you know, in terms of partnering with the other governments. you know, to-
Yeah, there's a very intentional effort going on related to that.
I'd be curious to know, because my sense has always been that the elder population is remarkably supportive of the schools, regardless of whether they have kids in them. Do we differ demographically from other districts in that respect?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So this may be a little less of a factor here.
But because our population continues to grow,
Yeah,
I think it's important maybe for them to realize that they recognize, you recognize that.
I think the best way to think about, you all are unique in sort of the makeup of the community and how the community perceives the schools. In the demographics, even when we look at your residents that are on fixed income and/or retired, their incomes, even in retirement, are significantly higher than other communities. So the affordability aspect is not as difficult here as it is in other places. So I think that allows residents to be more supportive, even though their kids aren't here. But I think the long-term trend overall, just in terms of attitude about taxes, there's a value part of that where eventually people start to say, okay, I'm paying money, how exactly am I getting any value beyond what I'm already paying, you know, for the community? So I think this is, for you all, not as pressing as it is for some communities, but isn't necessarily a bad idea, quite honestly.
The one thing, and I don't think we're done yet, and I think there might be another piece, but the one thing that when I read through the objectives, and I understand it's a part of the tax policy later on, but I think it should be an objective listed, which is kind of an explicit call out to economic development. That there has been an intentional effort and will continue to be an intentional effort to stimulate and cultivate and work with others to develop economic.
broader sources of.
Yes, Carter, yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Well, and then I'd like to get the board's thoughts, and Jeff and Brittany as well, is, you know, we have an explicit, you know, cash balance policy on which predicates, you know, this new proposed tax policy. Does that need to be called out earlier in this document? Or at least referenced? Because that's pretty much what guides our need for, you know, additional ones.
Where does that come in?
So it's at benchmarks and measurement charts.
Yeah.
It's number one, but are you thinking it needs to be?
I would like to see it more in the summary.
Okay.
Meaning the top two paragraphs?
Yeah, the top
Or-
two paragraphs, just because obviously, right, we already have a board policy in place, but this additional proposed taxation policy is more guided by, you know, the fact that we're between 90 and 160.
I think it can go under the second objective, identify when new tax requests are necessary.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think you can reference
That's good.
the.
If you all agree to that as well.
So, just so I understand, what would you like to add in that language?
I would, you know, that we already have an existing policy that guides us in our decision-making to include, you know, the need for additional taxation when,
In alignment with the cash
Correct,
balance.
yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
I think that's a good idea.
Bring it up.
And we
Right.
should even probably, like, I know this is
If-
very detailed, but like reference the policy
Number,
numbers.
yeah.
By number we mean letters,
Yeah.
but.
Does that number usually, does it stay the same, the
Yeah, it
policy
does.
number?
So I
I
can give
can-
that to you, or
you
it's
can-
on our site.
Yeah,
Well, I mean,
I'll
it-
just put a placeholder in here.
Just like emails or other requests, right, if you don't have me by the first one or two lines, or at least the
Right,
executive
yeah.
summary,
Right.
Yeah,
I'm gonna lose the gist of what this may be, and I mean, I even like to call out the fact that if we go above 160, with cash on hand, we're talking about how do we, you know, not pull additional tax revenue from the taxpayer, right? So, You know, not only withstanding if we go below that 90 request for new money, but when we go above 160, and that's forecasted to be that way for a while, is, hey, we're at some point gonna give money back, or not, you know,
Not take as much.
not take it much.
Right, right.
All right, so I'm putting, this is really more of a placeholder, but trying to get at some language. So clear procedures for determining when new tax revenue is required for operations, maintenance, or companies as guided by the cash balance policy number as
DAB.
revised from time to time.
DAB, it's letters, DAB policy. So,
Yeah?
policy. Yeah.
Yeah.
D.
Instead of cash?
Yeah, no, it's, the policy number is not a number, it's a
Oh.
lettering
Oh.
system, because we're OSBA,
Okay.
not NEON.
Which is more letters.
OSBA.
So it's the cash balance policy, D.
Everyone needs
B.
12 drafts of a policy before it's approved,
Is that
right?
D is in dog,
D is in dog.
A as in,
apple,
and
B as in
B as in
boy.
boy. Yes. All right, there you go. Sorry, that was comical. Sorry, painful, actually.
That was all I knew after that, so.
Yeah.
All right, got it. All right. Okey dokey, so we got that. Communicate with the district, or what the district delivers to the community. And this is, I think, we have maintained ongoing engagement with community ensure residents are aware of and receiving the value associated with district services and investment in students. So I think last time that was okay. So the pursuit of economic development, i.e. language, what did you?
Ms. Deeds, what did you just say? I thought it was really good when you mentioned about broadening the tax base or under economic development about.
Good.
I think that's about all I did.
All right.
It was really good.
So efforts.
Broaden the commercial tax base, or broaden commercial tax bases.
Yeah, we may recognize that we're not in control of that, but we would assist
Yeah.
or welcome, right? That happening.
David, I can send you some language.
Okay.
I'll work on that, since I suggested it.
Okay, yeah, I'll just put a placeholder in there, commercial tax base. Okay, yeah, I like that idea as well.
Well, I think it's really important for future boards to know that that has been a concerted effort of this board and beyond. So, and it needs to continue to be an effort, or else the issue will get worse for the tax base. So you can't do objective 2 without doing, this objective as well.
Well, do you want to get into, under benchmark, did you want to talk about the class 1, class 2
Yeah.
split? And so, David, maybe keeping that in mind as a metric might help draft the language for that objective.
Yeah, that was the other thing that I thought.
Okay, we'll get that, we'll jump down there. So so Jeff, you said you'll get me some language here. Okay.
And I had under benchmarks and measurement targets, you have like tax rate floor, I would put 5, class 1 versus class 2 ratio.
Where would you like, number 5 down?
Yeah,
Down here?
right there, yeah.
And what would you like to?
Just put class 1 versus class 2 ratio. And
Then we'll come up with language.
yeah, gotcha.
Okay.
May I ask a stylistic question? How, are we drafting this for the board or for John Q. Public? And the reason I ask that is, they're not gonna know what class 1, class 2,
Correct,
or
yeah.
the 20 mil floor. Do we need to explain it? I don't wanna complicate.
We can easily change class 1 to residential and commercial.
Or, class
individual
1,
business.
and in parentheses.
Residential.
Just
Yeah.
so they, and I don't know if there's an easy way to talk about the
That's
Yeah,
what
So
we're
my,
for.
my opinion, the purpose and objective is for the public and the rest is for the board.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's just my
Okay.
opinion. I don't know how you could possibly write a policy a tax policy that the public is going to fully digest and comprehend. And if you think about the rest of our policies, that's not really, I mean, you want people to be able to read them and understand, but
Right.
for the board and for the administration.
And David, under that, I would just put like in comparison to statewide averages.
Let's see these changes. For this one in comparison to statewide averages. All right, yeah, so Brittany's point is right, there's some parts of this, there's not enough word
Right.
smithing where
Yeah, I
everyone's
just-
gonna be able to digest it. But that's kind of why I started with it. At the beginning, it's much more simplified, and then as we get down into the body, we can't avoid some of the technical language that has to be used.
Right.
But for the most part, I mean, most people can read this and get 90% of it and go, okay, well, this one.
I guess I just wanted to see
No, I mean,
if
it's-
everybody was
It's,
understanding
Yeah.
that too.
and usually I do, like, the 24 is really hard to.
Yeah, it is,
To describe to people.
yeah.
But I've tried to use language that's fairly generic
Yeah.
in here. So, okay, so we have the standard, the idea is, this is just so that with this policy, what it's saying is that once a year, Brittany and/or who comes after Brittany will do a presentation to the board. Most treasurers are thinking about it, that they would do it at the same time that they do one of their forecast presentations. But it will be an update on all the statistical things that we looked at in the first two meetings. So once a year, just updating the demographics, updating your cash position, days of cash, how many years you've gone between levies. So that, and then keeping in mind, right now, we know that, but 10 years from now, when there's a new board sitting here and these folks, it's helpful to have that consistency so everyone sort of knows. So these are the items that are outlined, but you can change these over time. They don't always have to be the same things.
Well, and Brittany and I were just having a side conversation, maybe that class 1, class 2 should go here as a part of the report versus a target.
You could do that.
Because we don't have any control over that.
Yeah.
So it should just be kind of included in the report.
Yeah.
So just maybe
You
adjust
just
that.
take that and put it.
Yeah, exactly.
You could do that.
That makes more sense.
Yeah, and for you, for a lot of districts, that's a pretty meaningful thing to look at, especially, for example, the districts that have the pipeline revenues that, the pipelines today are significant parts of the revenue, but because of some of the law changes, it could change pretty rapidly. And if they're unaware of that split, it could be problematic. That's not right. I'll fix it. I never studied Word in school, so I'll fix that. Okay, all right, so our targets, so this is starting to get into the fund balances, so the 90 to 160 days, that's currently what's described in your current policy. But there's language in here, the purpose of this policy, there's multiple levels of objective here. The first is transparency for your community, so they understand how you're approaching things. The second is for guidance for the future boards, future administrators. The third is that for lawmakers and/or budget commissions at the county level, if they were ever to question your balances, to say, why you have as much as you have, this is to create the fact that we've established what our maximum number is using our own rationale through the cash policy. And that we reserve the right to increase that if we would like. If you're ever in a position where your balances are significantly higher than 160 days, then you want to be able to say, well, we're higher than 160 days, but that's also part of our responsibility is to protect our community from ongoing tax reform efforts, which are continuously trying to take money away from the school district. So that language is there as sort of a strategic, leave us alone. we have a plan type of a thing to make sure that, that you don't get overzealous budget commissions. And it's starting to take root around the state. I've got clients all over where the treasurer, the counties are now asking for, have you gotten a request? I don't think the county's doing it yet. But they're asking for historical spending, predicted spending for capital purchases. And that's driven by the districts that move money to the capital projects fund. What the budget, some of the budget commissions around the state are now saying, since you move that money, prove to us you intended to spend it on capital. So they're asking as a part of the budget report from the school districts to actually provide that evidence. So
I do want to clarify because we do a similar process. It's called the cash something statement. And so they ask us by calendar year 25, like for this year, 25, all calendar year 25 actual revenue and expenditures for general fund, permanent improvement, and bond, and then to estimate basically the rest of 26 and 27. So we do sort of a similar process.
Yeah.
They've not asked about the capital projects much,
Yeah.
though.
So hopefully, I think your county has been mostly core schools, as far as my experience, but that's not the case in other spots around. And I'll see if I can find the one. Crawford County is one. Fairfield County has a pretty onerous thing going on right now as well. So, but this should be all we need for now. Then we talk about the affordability. So this is, again, just establishing for the community your views of where your overall tax cost should be based on that cost table. But we changed it to be a comparison group instead of the districts that are around you. I think that was the consensus. And the comparison group contained, I think this was some of the districts that we identified for the comparison group. If you recall, there was a, what does our tax cost look like? This table that had our tax costs compared to this particular group of districts versus your neighbors, because when we looked at you versus your neighbors, you were a lot higher than with the other school districts that are high. These are high-performing, high-wealth communities that are around the state. You guys remember? So, so each year, the analysis is to look at this and to say you want to be as low as possible, not necessarily the lowest. And as low as possible is a pretty broad range, but it just gives some perspective to the cost. With the full understanding, we cannot control home values and family income. What it does, though, over time, if you're number 11 and then the next year you're 12 and then you're 13 and then you're 14 and then you're 15 and you're 16, it starts to drive the question, should we be paying more attention to this? Is this potentially going to be something that's problematic for our community? So it serves as a way of monitoring how you're shifting in the overall cost side of the equation. And as I mentioned before, this is just cost. It's not the value side of the equation. This is what you cost. It could be that your value to the community is significantly greater than the value that Kinston is providing its community. So that's why there should be the two parts of the discussion. So it's not just how much are we costing, it's are we actually providing something that you as a resident consider valuable to us.
Should we add value as a target?
Well,
as well?
value is a little tough to add as a target. So this is the language that I have today says, where So that, we've got that objective of delivering value. I don't see ways.
Should we look at like performance index or something like that in the slides previously as a value?
Well, we did. You had a PI index and then.
Yeah.
Number one versus.
Yeah. This one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that, and gap
Oh,
closure.
shoot. Oh, there it is. So we could add, I haven't had a district that has added that, but we could add either gap closing or performance or some other measurement. So this is the performance index as measured against the statewide districts. You're number one though in Central Ohio. So that's why the comparison group really matters. I always tell people, like, our experience for what we're paying and what we're receiving is usually low. I mean, it's kind of based on what other districts in this area to be experiencing. Because I don't know how many people here would know much about Wyoming or would know about, Sycamore or any of the districts that are not quite here. But when you look at just what's happening here, I have that one. First, second session.
Maybe it doesn't make sense because it's a tax policy and that's not similar to these other items, but it feels kind of odd to talk about affordability without talking about the value piece of it.
Okay, so here's the same table, but with just the regional comparison. So these are just the districts right here in our region. So your value, so your interpretation being in the board, the question is it more meaningful to compare yourself to your region versus a statewide comparison of only districts that are the wealthiest, highest performing districts? And that's where that's just open for discussion.
The statewide group had a number in Central Ohio.
They did, yeah. But you
4 or 5
outperform
at
all of
least,
them.
yeah.
Yeah. So the majority of the districts that were outperforming you were Cincinnati, Cleveland, in that area. But in Central Ohio, you're number one. Yeah. You're the creme de la creme for Central Ohio.
So Brittany, what were you thinking, adding something to number 2 there? Adding something to the affordability? As comparable. Either adding it to that. While.
So we could.
Maintain taxpayer affordability as low as possible out of the 20 districts referenced, while maintaining the highest value possible. And then you could even specify if that's performance index or what.
While maximizing the value.
Yeah.
So for item number 2, right here.
Yeah, so maintain taxpayer affordability as low as possible while maximizing value.
Would you want to go as far as identifying which one of those measures you would want to, like a performance index
Yeah.
or?
PI.
Yeah, while maximizing performance of it.
Or WS defined by performance index.
Yeah, I'll work on this wording a little bit. I'll maximum, because that.
Also, it says, the comparison group referenced above, but I don't think it actually references that somewhere else.
You're right.
And I don't know how to do that necessarily without just listing the actual districts, but
Yeah.
that honestly, I wouldn't hate that idea because we do have this conversation a lot about what districts to compare to, so.
We could say
written
as
somewhere.
determined by the board,
Yeah, that's fine.
because I think it used to say that. Because sort of depending on things, you might decide to shift around there or change the mix of the comparison group.
So just have it as an appendix.
Yeah, yeah, that would make sense.
It's like cluttering up the policy.
Okay. All right. So the operating cycle, that is this one was where I think we ended our conversation. We're close to it. So the period, whenever you have your next levy, new money levy, what is a reasonable time frame to say to your community, we'd like that money to last X number of years? And I think we agreed or settled on this on 6 years as being that amount of time between levy requests. The advantages, twofold. You guys talked about, in a way, the renewal levy gives you a chance to check in with your community every so often and make sure they're happy with the way things are going, and that's matters here. For the new money levy, A, it gives you a chance to check in, but B, typically, the shorter the time period between levies, the levy requests tends to be smaller, so you're not asking for as much. Some districts, when they go 10 years or 15 years, that levy request is pretty significant instead of smaller amounts more frequently. So this is in a way kind of that strategy as well. All right, 20 mil floor, so this was the other conversation. So we recognize, we recognize that there are advantages and disadvantages to being on the 20 mil floor, subject to revision, meaning you can change your mind on this. The board does not currently believe the advantages outweigh the disadvantages, and therefore will not undertake efforts that would artificially accelerate the reduction of the effective tax rates to reach the 20 mil floor. You guys need any discussion around that? All right. We'll add this under the benchmarks. So key actions, the district to maintain financial sustainability, ensure fairness in taxation. These are the following actions and guidelines considered. These include considerations for the types of taxpayers in the community, property values, income demographics, tax structures, expenditure minimization, and revenue growth. The district shall seek to create and maintain revenue streams that adjust for inflation whenever possible. So the previous paragraph, we said that the 20 mil floor is not, because that's one way of having revenue adjusting. I don't think that this bullet necessarily contradicts that, because there is still the income tax that would do that. Are you okay with that?
Yeah,
staying?
I agree. I think
Yeah.
that reads, to me, this reads the intent to renew.
Yeah. Or let's say the state comes up with some other option that's not income tax, not sales tax. Or treasurer, CFO should use their best efforts to minimize expenditures and maximize revenue growth opportunities to avoid the need for new taxes. And that maximize revenue growth opportunities really also captures the thought of economic development, being aggressive in that arena. Treasurer superintendent shall report regularly to the board on efforts to control expenditures and pursue revenue growth. This is sort of something you do already. It's just that, again, in writing, whoever the future people would be, the superintendent seat, the treasurer seat, they know it is their responsibility to report to you. It's not, I've been in meetings where the treasurer will say, oh yeah, we saved $400,000 by doing this. I'm like, does the board know? Does the community know? Oh, I guess I should tell them. Yeah, be a good idea, you know, to make sure that they know that you're doing things. If the fund balances fall below the minimum days of cash, the board shall direct the treasurer and superintendent to recommend corrective actions. That should go kind of hand in hand with your CAS policy. If the new money levy becomes necessary, the treasurer shall recommend the amount to the board. The board may adjust or reject the recommendation, but must ensure that the final decision preserves the district's ability to remain solvent, that is, maintaining a positive fund balance for at least a 6-year period following the passage of such levy. So you might be wondering, why do we need to say this? I have a client this very second where the finance officer said, we need to pass a levy that's 8 mils. The community, they put it on the ballot, community voted it down, they came back, and the treasurer said, again, we need at least 8 mils. The board said, well, our community's not going to give us 8, we're going to put 4 on. The treasurer said, well, that's going to last us 2 years. And the board said, yeah, we're going to do it anyway. If you're, it's just a matter of opinion, but if you're going to put a levy on, there should, I mean, 2 years is really not a good idea. I mean, you survive just for 2 years and then have to go back to the voters. So this is saying that even if you disagree with the amount the treasurer is recommending, that at a minimum, whatever goes on the ballot should keep you solvent for 6 years, which is consistent with the 6-year cycle, and not something less. How do you feel about that? It sort of strikes me as common sense.
Yeah.
Please. What went through my mind was the number 3 above, the no sooner than 6 years after the passage. And this is just remembering when the legislature, just before the end of a fiscal year, came back and,
Cut our revenue.
yeah.
Yeah.
Was there?
Barring any taking by the government.
Interference. Yeah, I mean, it seems to me as though if we're committing for making things last, we ought at least to acknowledge the, I hope not likely, but the possibility that there might be circumstances well outside of our control that would make that not possible.
Correct. I think that's,
Yeah, I think that makes sense to add something,
I do
acknowledging
too.
that. I mean, obviously, we would be able to explain that to the community if that occurred.
I'm not sure how many people in the community really understood when it happened.
Agreed, but if, maybe the community is not the right word, but a budget commission.
Right, yes.
You know, if we were.
They should certainly.
Yeah, if we were defending
Right,
to the budget commission or something like that.
but it's more a function of being able to explain to the community when you're going back sooner than, hey, you said 6 years. Yeah, that was before the legislature decided to.
Yeah, so.
There is a,
I don't know if it's just possible to put a caveat in there.
Yeah, no, I see
Okay.
it.
well, we have something in here. This is, okay, so this section here is intended to, but regardless of where you finally end up on the decision, what this says is that you all as a board should document your rationale for any actions to be taken as a result of the entire process. And then at a minimum, you should make it available to the public prior to board action. So let's say, for whatever reason, you have to opt for something that's 5 years or 4 years, even though the policy says 6. You all have to write your rationale for making it 4 years. Put it on the website. It doesn't say how long it has to be on the website, but before you actually pass a resolution, putting a 4-year levy on or something like that, the community is given a right to understand how you came to that conclusion. So you could say, because of these factors, even though our policy says 6 years, we're going to do something differently. Or even if we do follow policy. But the goal of that language is it gives the board the opportunity to explain to people, we made a decision based on these things, or we're planning to make a decision based on these things, and before we do, we want to make sure you know.
Well, that's a good point. I wrote after question mark because I don't know how we can simultaneously not have taken action and have it on the website. Like, I'm just confused on the timing of that.
Yeah, we can clean this language up a little more. The thought would be you would have a board meeting where you're saying,
Discussing it.
if some districts recently around here had, which district was it? The board was presented with 2 or 3 levy choices. And they said, okay, you can do a property tax this way, another property tax, or an income tax. And the board had talked about the pros and cons and didn't actually vote on it, but said, hey, we think an income tax is the better thing. So at that point, you wouldn't take action. Instead, you would publish something on the website saying the board discussed this, something beyond just the minutes. And it appears that the income tax is the way we'd like to go, and that's for these reasons. The next meeting that you would have after publishing that would be the action, the first action to put the levy on. So it's basically somewhere
that makes
between
sense.
the options that are to be considered, the one that seems most favored, an explanation, then action.
So then I think we need to clarify and say, at a minimum, such a
In this language?
prior to the BOE action, to put a levy on the ballot or something like that. So basically indicating that a discussion occurs at a meeting prior to the
Yeah.
formal action for
So-
like the first resolution for a levy.
So the language, so the rationale has to be published not just for levy requests, but like if you reduce levies or eliminate them, if you take a temporary levy and turn it into a permanent, if you move inside millage, if you decide you're going to agree on an economic development proposal, why you would do that. If you have 300 days of cash and you decide to use $2 million to do something before you actually authorize the use of that money. So it's pretty much any decision that the board would want to make for any particular purpose would require a notice or at least some explanation that would be published on the website. So it's not always going to be a levy in particular. It could be, so like reductions in services, staffing, or programs. And actually, I had changed this to be with another district material.
Well, that's the most problematic actually because of our collective bargaining process and notification to them. I don't know how this all flows with that process.
Right, we'll have to take a look at that, and, because we have certain requirements, number of days, that, yeah.
That's for,
Like a
so
reduction in staff.
Yeah, reduction in force.
for your
Our red
certified
flag.
or classified as well?
All.
Both.
Okay. Yeah, so we could, again, think that through. The bullets are there to kind of capture the possibilities of things. The goal, though, of the paragraph is to say that before the board takes action, there's an explanation to the community of the action. So that's the goal, is to have something where people know.
Yeah.
We may just put a material reduction in services staffing programs in alignment with the collective bargaining unit.
Okay.
But back to Amy's point, I think at the last meeting, we took note of something along the lines of, at that point, it was related to growth, but a similar concept, I think, is what you're kind of looking for. to our two references to the 6 year, just kind of put something, a disclaimer that says, no sooner than 6 years, barring any unexpected growth or other factors outside of the board's
Extraordinary.
control.
Yeah,
Or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unexpected events that we drop something like that in here. Or something similar to.
Something.
Yeah, I'm not sure that unexpected is quite right.
I like extraordinary.
Extraordinary.
Outside of our control,
Right.
and that's what it comes down to.
Right.
And what we're talking about is the things we
Uncontrollable.
can control.
Yeah.
Outside of our control.
And that barring any events outside of our, outside of the board's control.
Okay.
Or I don't even know if events is the right word, barring any factors.
That could cover actions of legislature,
Okay.
or developers, or.
Okay.
Change events to factors.
I'm sorry.
Events to factors.
Factors.
Thank you.
Okay. All right.
That's good.
All right, if the business property tax base is 25% or greater of the district's total tax base, then the district should avoid using an additional income tax unless there's a desirable property tax cost on residents receiving fixed income.
I kind of thought that that could just be
Eliminated.
removed, because it's
We'll just
literally
take that out.
never
Yeah,
going
we're
to
never
happen.
gonna get there.
Irrelevant.
What do you mean?
Speaking of active, yeah.
Okay. Oh, wait.
It's an ice cream.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave them to strike it, so I can. Okay. All right, good.
That's fine.
One of these days, though,
Yeah.
what, you
Right.
never know. So all levies should be for at least a 5-year term. That was previously for a continuing period. We had a good conversation around that. The district should avoid seeking levies in times of economic distress if possible. Did we decide yea or nay to that?
No, it's not 6, but did we say that we wanted new levy requests? I know it says at least 5 years, but like, would we actually consider putting a property tax on for 5 years as opposed to just continuing?
Oh, yeah,
So you have to differentiate
Yeah.
between.
But that's it says new levies, I think we could just
Yes,
say.
so-
New levies.
Yes, we actually have to be very intentional because we do not want to get caught in the situation of constantly having to renew property taxes. This board and every board prior has always been, property taxes are continuing. And because otherwise you're caught in that game where property values are increasing and then decreasing, and then you're constantly adjusting and then having to renew something that's existing and then putting new money on. It literally adds like 20 levy requests over 10-year.
For the fun of it, so to your point,
Yeah,
years ago, I had a client that had 3 levies that were 5-year levies, and sort of over time, they had an emergency levy, current expense levy, and an income tax that were all on 5-year cycles. And on top of that, they needed a bond issue, and they needed an operating levy, and another bond issue for high school. So I thought it would be fun to show them each one of these X's represents when they would have had to have been on the ballot. And this is not a situation, I mean, this is what ends up happening when you have multiple 5-year levies. This was one of my first tax policy clients. So we were able to actually, when they saw that, they were like, oh my gosh. So we went through and literally changed everything. So this ended up being after they did the tax policy, converting their 5-year levies to continuing. And they ended up like this versus the other structure. So, but to a degree, that 5-year there's a reason for that here, you guys.
For the renewal of the income tax.
For the renewal of the income tax, and
Period.
if you give, people the ability to check in on that, then this was originally worded continuous period of time.
That's-
You want to go back to that?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
But then I think we need to add another bullet point to John's point, saying something about renewal of the income tax shall be every 5 years.
Yeah, the
That's what it
community
Okay.
definitely let us know the last go around that a continuous income tax was not an appetite. But I do agree with Jeff, right, any property tax would be continuous.
It doesn't mean that they would never accept it. It was a good concept. I
Sure.
get what you're saying. And it was touted on the basis of, let us demonstrate how it works and how responsible we can be with it.
Absolutely. In income tax, though, unlike property tax, you have multiple property tax levies right?
Right.
Per statement.
Right.
In income tax, right, if we had multiple income or had to raise it at some point in time, right, that that wouldn't be the angle or the visibility I would want. So differentiating between, the renewal of an income tax would be for at least a 5-year term. I like that. I mean, because at some point, right, we may have to increase it if we need to diversify revenue more. But even number 7 in all new levies, I think it would be any new property.
to change that to property?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, good catch.
yeah.
But we want any, even new property tax that we can do that, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause in order to do if you were to do an income tax for continuing, you'd have to convert the other one. You can't have a 5-year and continuing, right?
Is there even a discussion of, do we have multiple, you can't have multiple income tax, can you?
You can have
You can?
multiple, they just have to,
Okay.
well, wait, I think I said it wrong. You can actually have, you can have multiple as long as they're the same type, so traditional versus earned, right? So your
Okay.
traditional, you couldn't have an earned and a traditional, but you can have a continuing and a 5-year. So you can do that. I was misspoke on
Do we want that to say for at least a 5-year term?
Yeah.
Or do we want it just to say
that. For a 5-year term.
for a 5-year term?
Yeah.
I'm asking the question if you want to have a conversation every 5 years about what, because that leaves it open to every 5 years, we're going to have this conversation about what are we going to do versus the policy just locking in place is what we're going to do.
Yeah, I think we at least need to have a discussion, right, does it need to be adjusted based on inflation? Does it need to be adjusted based on economic, forecasting or the outlook of the community? So,
Like given property or
income, right?
Yeah, so-
If there's another recession, right? If there's another pandemic, is we would need to adjust income tax based on that, or at least adjust that policy.
So leave it as at least. You don't lock in for 5 years.
Right. I mean, short term, the community expects us to renew the income every 5 years. At some point, would we give a future board governance to, or advisement to switch that to continuous?
or
4 to 10?
Yeah,
Sure.
I would like, my preference would be as much flexibility as we can in this policy.
I mean, if you say at least, right, you can go to 10. Right? That's
Yeah,
the
and the
floor,
income
right?
tax-
That's the
yeah.
floor, because we don't want a 2-year, right? We don't want a 4-year.
Income taxes can actually be for any number of years. The law is open-ended, so you could do a 7-year, do a 10-year, do a 13-year. So unlike property taxes that are 5, 10, income taxes, any number of years.
The only thing I'll say is, I understand the desire for flexibility, but the policy can be amended at any point too by the board. So it's not like this is set in stone necessarily. I don't think, I wouldn't view it that way.
It
To
does
me-
give them, somebody understanding where the board was at that time.
Yes,
But,
yeah.
but you're right.
To me, I have a desire to document some of the things that I think we've talked about in a more concrete way, in case there are different people in the seats. That's why I like some of the concrete things that we've done. So I appreciate that.
I think for at least a 5-year term gives us that flexibility.
Yeah.
All right, so did we have a discussion about economic conditions and whether or not that should weigh into the decision to put a levy on the ballot? Renewals, you're kind of stuck, you don't have much of a choice, but for a new money levy, I only bring this up because a lot of the feedback that we got from districts that were on the ballot failed in May was that the school districts were tone deaf. You know, people were paying $5 a gallon for gas, inflation's through the roof. How dare you have the audacity to ask me to pay more taxes? And even though it was impossible to, districts had to decide to be on the ballot back in December, January, it's impossible to predict where things were. If you are in an environment where the economy or some signals are there that it's not a good time, would it make sense to say to the community, we're going to do our best not to bug you during COVID? Or do you want to remain silent on this type of thing? Because I've heard arguments both ways. Some people will tell you that, it's hard to define economic distress. That some people feel like they're always in some degree of economic distress. I can't disagree with that.
And, there was a time in this district where, because of the state's economic distress of an $8 billion hole, they took money away. And so it created an economic distress for us, but it required us to go right back on the ballot. We passed a levy, and then 3 years later, less than 3 years later, we had to pass another levy, just to recover the money that the state took from us. So I feel like we should probably not put that in, because yes, it's an appropriate statement, but I feel like sometimes somebody else's economic stress creates economic distress for us.
I also think that by it saying if possible at the end, basically just validates the entire previous statement.
Right.
So it basically says nothing.
Yeah, I would just.
You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like, yes, obviously, we would try to avoid going on the ballot when gas is $5 a gallon, but seeing as gas is continuing to be $5 a gallon, at some point, we would need to go on the ballot. So it's like, what are you actually saying?
And I thought of this, maybe it should just be like, not necessarily about economic distress, but maybe we should continue to collaborate with other municipalities and not conflict with other levies being put on the ballot as much as possible. Because that's more of a factor. We don't want to be on at the same time the township is on, or for a levy, fire levy, or the library is on, or, we try and make sure that we're paying attention to that as a board, more than,
Does that need to be in policy, or is that not just
I think,
glaringly obvious?
it's glaringly obvious, but I think so is that too. So, if we take that out, then,
Yeah.
but again, we're trying to
Do
be
you
transparent for
feel, do you
people.
feel like that is
Not
still a
glaringly
reasonable
obvious.
business practice, to say, because that's been a practice that governments have used as long as I've been in the business, to try their best to coordinate their levies so they're not on at the same time.
Right.
It's never been written down, and it's a good policy, it's a good practice. I don't think it hurts to actually write it down. You would be the first to say you'll do your
because,
best.
we have an example just down the road where the school district was going, and talking about being on the ballot, and then the fire department put a levy on at the last minute and conflicted with them. And again, if you have it in policy to say, hey, we tried to communicate with everybody, and this happened outside of that, gives us a little bit more cover. Yeah.
I think it also emphasizes the collaboration, yes, which is important.
I just took a look at that. The district will avoid seeking levies when other overlapping governments are seeking levies or something like that. And then I did leave, I put or in times of extended economic distress. Would you like to
I take
Yeah,
that part
I
out.
know that.
kill the economic distress?
Yeah.
There's certain non-negotiables, right? Fire, EMS, police, in my mind.
Yeah.
Public education's a very close second to that. So,
I will leave if possible, simply because there are times where
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
just can't,
Yeah.
I mean,
Sure.
you just
Yeah.
can't avoid
Right.
having to do it. Okay, I'm gonna work on that. I'm not
Right.
thrilled with this. I'll work on that language a little bit. Okay. All right, now for the fun stuff. Spending extra money when you have it.
So
The,
we have about 12 minutes.
I'm sorry.
We have about 12 minutes.
Okay, we're almost there. So this is intended to kind of outline to the extent you have more money than what is required by the fund balance policy. And this particular policy, it boils down to, and this one says in no particular order, the superintendent and the CFO can make recommendations for using that money. It includes maintaining, enhancing, or adding educational programs provided to students, constructing or improving facilities and equipment, furnishings, paying down or paying off debt to the extent the interest rate on that debt is higher than the rate that she's earning on her cash. Because if she's earning 5%, your debt's 3%, you wouldn't want to pay it off. Reducing the amount of taxes being collected from taxpayers by any legal means available. And that's there as a defense against the Budget Commission saying, we're going to reduce your taxes because you have too much cash. What we're saying is, we're in control of that. We're making that decision too. Or keeping those cash balances. So think of it as just having a savings account, which is what you have today. You have the money to operate without new taxes because you have reserves for that purpose. That's, I think, the universe of things, quite honestly. Okay, so tax incentives, the board hereby establishes the following guidelines to guide the district's behavior. This language basically says regarding incentives related to economic proposal using abatements of any type or any tax incentive financings, whether or not the board approval is required. So that whether or not is a great example of what just happened. Some school districts take the position that if the board doesn't have to approve it, they don't really have any leverage, so they just let it happen. This is saying that it doesn't matter whether you have board approval authority or not. You should be actively engaged to negotiate, to describe, to try to get the best possible outcome for your community. So that's what the whether or not is saying. And I just had a district that did this about a year ago, had a company that was building a building in a CRA that does not require board approval. The treasurer though called me and said, hey, should I be saying something about this? I said, sure, send them a letter and say, your district needs money, you guys have a levy on the ballot, it would be nice for them to not, to pay you what their abatement would be. So he reached out to the city. The city said, well, we'll talk to the company. The company came back and said, we'll give you 50% of what we would have paid to you. And the city said, we'll pay you the other 50%. So when otherwise, if they hadn't said anything, so that's why that language is useful. You guys, this says that you guys will be supportive of economic development proposals, subject to review. So,
Also, is it clear that economic development is commercial? Like, because I think some other entities could argue that economic development is.
residential, so yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. What do you think?
Well, I mean, so as long as the commercial venture, because a mixed use does have residential component, but it's still a commercial venture. So I still think adding commercial is, and we will never want to subsidize or abate residential outside of a commercial venture. So yes, I think we should.
It's 90 days enough.
So I actually think we should take 90 days out.
Okay.
We should think it's too long.
It's too long.
It's too low.
Because some of the proposals, if we have a 90-day waiting period, the proposal will die.
Okay.
So we have to have, I think we can take that whole thing out.
This, okay.
But do you, yeah, I mean, unless you,
Well, do TIFs require 2 readings?
well, we don't have
Because
to,
we're a monthly board.
Most of these,
we don't even have.
our approval is not going to be.
Right.
Yeah, so the, part of the reason this language is here is not so much for districts like you guys. Your degree of sophistication is higher than a lot of other districts in dealing with economic development. Some districts aren't real savvy and they get put into a corner and they're told that they have to approve something in a week's time. And this is to protect them from being backed into a corner to approve something in a week's time where a city might say, hey, we've got this large developer, we need a 30 or 100% TIF. It's going to create 1,000 jobs, and if you block this, we're going to lose the biggest economic development thing. And without having proper time to really analyze what they're proposing to you, you could make a mistake. And it's sort of there as a protection, but it doesn't have to be 90, it should be something, I think.
Maybe a
For-
30 day,
Yeah, we do 30 in there, I think.
that's reasonable because most things happen within a month. Yeah. And then, yes, okay, yes.
Outside
Yes.
consult, so we'll retain outside consultant at its discretion to assist in any negotiations regarding a proposal. That's again at your discretion. Superintendent shall aggressively protect the overall interests of the district's taxpayers.
I mean, most superintendents aren't as savvy as the treasurer.
Yeah.
And so,
And
I
most-
mean,
and
I
most
think
are-
it should be both superintendent and CFO,
Okay.
or treasurer, whatever language we use, but it should be both. They shouldn't, it should be a tag team. Yeah, I know you would.
Yeah, again, you know, having the experience of working with you all through the stuff over here, you are 1 in 1,000, quite honestly. I mean, in terms of the skill set, the commitment to looking out for the district's best interests, these guys are phenomenal. You know, they didn't pay me to say that. I sit through these meetings with lots of people, and usually I'm like, you should be doing something, you should be doing something. These guys are already, they're telling me when they've done something, so it's a pretty good job here. All right, a tax abatement notification should be addressed from the perspective of retaining as much revenue for the district as possible. The goal there is, you know, back to what we learned here is that there's backside value to other parties, but they're leveraging what you bring to the table so they make the profit on the backside. And if they're going to use your good name and the things you bring to the table, then you should be sharing in the profit on the backside. You shouldn't be pocketing $13 million in cash or whatever the number could have been without.
Hypothetically.
Hypothetically.
Yes.
Right, yeah, hypothetically, allegedly.
So, one of the things that I would like to see as part of this process is a reference to an appendix that has actual sample agreements. Because one of the things that is, we're gonna take this and then kind of mesh it with the village and the township and their financial piece. So I kind of want to have some sample deliverables of what we would expect. So
Okay.
we have some samples that we've already crafted.
Okay.
So I think we should just kind of create an appendix that houses those.
For the
For
policy.
TIFs, for CRAs,
Yeah.
for all the potential
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, no, I agree that that's a good idea, or at least maybe even if it's not a full agreement, some segments of some
Templates,
language
yeah.
on these certain topics. Additionally, we only reference TIFs in this language, and I would like to see CRAs and even NCAs added as well. Like, I'm even thinking something as concrete as anytime there's a development proposed that projects an increase in enrollment by X number of students, the board will direct the superintendent to formally request an NCA from the developer, something like that. Just so that we're not handling those situations in one-offs, and so it doesn't look like we're
Targeting a
targeting a
yeah.
specific development or developer. And then for the CRAs, you know, it goes to the point of number 5 of retaining as much revenue as possible, but like almost something that says, oh, anytime a CRA is proposed, we will kind of, to your example, always request a payment in lieu of equal to the taxes foregone or a per pupil amount or something like that. What your thoughts are on that?
All the above, yes.
Yeah. Yep, so I can work on some language. So I captured the
Yep.
NCA up there, so, yeah, I'll work on some language. So I just want to make sure I understand, on the appendix, so you want an appendix for the policy that shows sample
Yeah.
agreements?
Gotcha.
Okay. Gotcha.
And Dave, we could send you a couple of those.
Yeah, and then I just want to get the wording right for the policy. Okay, and so there's the review process annually or at the request of the board. I think we already touched on this earlier.
Yeah.
So the finance officer is going to go over the benchmarks. If there's anything that doesn't look right, smell right, the board isn't happy, wants a better explanation, treasurer and superintendent have 60 days to come back to the board with an explanation or whatever the case might be. And then the board will take those recommendations into consideration for any of the following items down there. Oh, wait a minute. We went through this earlier. I already did it, Mark. All right, that's it.
Yeah?
Yeah, right on time.
1 minute to go.
So here's the plan. I want to clean this up and then come back for like a 30-minute, just a brief, go back over with just the things that we've changed. So it shouldn't take me but a couple
Do we
minutes.
want to just do that as part of our regular meeting or a special meeting?
I would say let's just do it regular, or as part of the regular next
And have that as a first reading?
first reading.
So we'll do a first reading of the policy. Are you available September 14th at 6:30?
What time?
6:30.
I'm right down the street. And I'm at Heath's board meeting at 5.
Yeah, it's a different, I don't know why it's the 14th and not the 21st, but that's okay. What about October 19th?
I'm open on the night.
At 6:30.
I know there's a reason for the September 14th, but
6:30.
Janelle knows.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, I can be there. So we'll have to dust this off and then refresh our memory for that. Couple months.
Okay.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
So we need to adjourn.
Yes, we need a
Yes.
motion to adjourn. please.
Adjourn.
Second, Ms. Chief got it.
Yeah.
Mr. Cronk?
Aye.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Ms. Shaw?
Aye.